No, I don't believe Lane Kiffin when he says he anticipates Austin Simmons starting on Saturday.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we break down why the Ole Miss Tulane game is in the perfect trap spot with a top 10 matchup potentially against LSU looming right after. Jon Sumrall at Tulane is an excellent coach, and this Greenway team will have a plan for Trinidad Chambliss and Austin Simmons, and likely a pretty good one if we're going to be real about it. The big question is, will the Rebels play well enough to secure the win? But first, we start with Lane Kiffin's press conference where he said something intriguing enough to matter if it proves true. All of that and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're free and available on all the podcast platforms and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a big shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, full disclosure, I created just the best episode of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast in recorded history. Hit all the points, man. I was absolutely rolling. And then I looked at it and the audio was messed up on it. So I had to re-record again. So we're going to try and recreate what I just said. But if I don't, and I'm a little bit impatient and this is a little bit shorter episode, please don't judge me too harshly for that. All right, today's podcast, Lane Kiffin, he actually said that Austin Simmons, he anticipated him starting. And it's not that I don't believe him. You know, it's not like oh, Lane Kiffin's a dirty, dirty liar. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we are in boy who cried wolf territory with Lane Kiffin. With whenever he says something is he hopes a player plays or he anticipates a player playing, there's nearly a 100% rate of that player not playing in the game. Okay? We've gotten to that point. And good friend of the program, Michael Katz, he actually was in there and said, hey, Lane Kiffin says he anticipates Austin Simmons to be the starting quarterback this weekend. And then he quote tweeted and he says, I just report what he says, man. Because nobody believes this. Everybody saw the game on Saturday night when he could not put any pressure on it. We all know that he was more hurt than was getting out. There was obviously games being played in the game on Saturday, to the point where in the second half, Lane Kiffin said if he had to play a quarterback, he was not going to play Austin Simmons because he could not go. Now, I've talked to sources that says Austin Simmons is better after this game than he was against Kentucky. Okay? The ankle's better after this game than against Kentucky. But the difference is that the aggravation, whatever the word is, Austin Simmons obviously at the end of this game could not go. He couldn't. He did throw a touchdown pass after the injury was aggravated, okay? He did do that, but we're not questioning his ability, his want to, and his desire to be the starting quarterback. We're not even questioning his talent level. All we're doing is questioning what we saw with our own two eyes and what we're hearing right now a couple of days later. Is there a chance he could be the starter? I guess sure. I guess miracles happen. I guess it could be a situation with Austin Simmons on the field. But my question would be, why is he starting? After Trinidad Chambliss had the game that you did not expect him to have against the Arkansas Razorbacks. After Trinidad Chambliss was, I think, a National Player of the Week by a certain service this week, throwing for 353 yards and a touchdown and adding 2 more on the ground. Why would you rush Austin Simmons back? It makes no logical sense that Austin Simmons would start other than the fact that Austin is going to give everything he can to get back on the field, because if Trinidad does what he did against Arkansas again, Trinidad's going to be starting against LSU regardless. Maybe it's a panic move by the people surrounding Austin Simmons. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's the fact that they don't want to get Wally pipped. Maybe that is going around. Lane Kiffin's just doing what Lane Kiffin does. He's been doing this for 5 years. He does not talk about injuries, but he gets asked about injuries. And he talks about anticipating the player plays, or anticipating the player starts, honestly, or hoping the player plays. That's an old hat type thing, but we in the media kind of run with it every single time because, as Michael Katz says, I just report on what he says. I do not think that Austin Simmons is going to start on Saturday. I do not think that Austin Simmons is going to play on Saturday. And again, it's nothing to do with Austin's talent level, whether or not he's the starter or anything like that. Ole Miss has an important game against the Tulane Green Wave, but that is the doorway to a difficult portion of the schedule, including the LSU Tigers, including the Georgia Bulldogs, and including the Oklahoma Sooners. Those games, you really need Austin Simmons to be 100% healthy and good to go. Ole Miss can beat Tulane with Trinidad Chambliss. Ole Miss can beat Tulane without Austin Simmons. If they can't, you weren't going to the playoffs anyway. But Ole Miss should be able to win the game because they have better players than Tulane, just on the fact that they're an SEC school and Tulane's an American school. The talent level is going to tick up. And the Power 4 wins that Tulane has been able to get over the course of this season is against Northwestern at home and against Duke. Two not very traditionally strong Power 4 teams. Northwestern's one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten. Duke, there's a little bit of getting up for Duke. You wanted to win that game because of Darian Mensah transferring to the Blue Devils for like $4 million a year. But they're not the team that they even were a year ago when Ole Miss put a 50 burger on them. So this game against the Tulane Green Wave, this is going to be, in my opinion, the Trinidad Chambliss show. And if he has a situation where he has to come out for a play, now, granted, his helmet comes off or something like that, it's going to be A.J. Maddox on the field. I do not think that Austin Simmons is going to play in this game unless Trinidad Chambliss gets injured. I've heard from sources that Ole Miss really trust their number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks. They do not trust their number 3 and below. That's kind of the Mendoza line, essentially. So if there's a helmet come off situation where Trinidad just had to come out for a play, it's going to be A.J. Maddox. If Trinidad got hurt, it would be Austin Simmons. Either way, Ole Miss should win this game. Ole Miss has a better team than the Tulane Green Waves. John Rutzlaff or the Tulane, there's some weapons on the team. There's a way that they can hurt you, and yes, they can beat you, but you have to help in them beating you. You have to turn the ball over, throw interceptions. You have to fumble. You have to get penalties in inopportune times. Maybe going for it in your own territory, giving them short fields is how you lose to the Tulane Green Waves. Because Tulane, make no mistake, is not going to beat themselves, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. You have to beat Tulane. They're not going to beat themselves. But Ole Miss has the team that can win this game. So we'll see exactly how it goes. All right. Could Ole Miss be staring a quarterback controversy in the eye if they're not careful? They could. And most Rebel fans are already anticipating Trinidad Chambliss stepping into that role. But if Trinidad is under center, how will Jon Sumrall try to scheme him up? Listen, the key for Ole Miss will be leaning on the run game to keep Chambliss balanced while Lane Kiffin uses tempo and play action to create clean looks. We'll break down what Sumrall's likely defensive blueprint will be and how the Rebels can counter that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app that where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in under than 60 seconds. I've been playing Prize Picks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in the NFL season. It's quick, easy, and honestly, it's my favorite way to follow along with football. The best part, even if your pick misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 off your lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, do us a favor and like and subscribe and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but helps keep all of this free. If you want to do more, join the Insiders program. At the link down below, there's no trolls, a 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. Give it a try, and don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, they're ready for you. All right, so an interesting situation. Jon Sumrall has a game of film to game plan against Trinidad Chambliss. He has the ability to kind of affect what's going on with that. And he's a really good coach, people. Now, I definitely want to point that out. The best part of the Tulane Green Wave in 2024, 2025, Jon Sumrall. He is the best way moving forward. If you remember Jackson Dart's first start, Ole Miss beat Troy like 24-17 or something like that, with Dart being the quarterback. Jon Sumrall pulled the strings in that game, and Troy was a very good team. Tulane is just a better version of that Troy team, better athletes. There's a jump from between the Sun Belt and the American Conference. So they're going to have a well put together, well coached football team. How do you stop Trinidad Chambliss? Now, a lot of the passes for Trinidad in the first game was behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of the run game was Trinidad running the ball with Kewan Lacey, lead blocking from time to time. He ended up with 62 yards rushing or something like that to go with his 353-yard passing. His over 400 yards day is amazing, and 353 yards. It was the highest output by an Ole Miss quarterback in their starting debut since Jordan Ta'amu's game against the Arkansas Razorbacks in, I guess it was 2016, something like that. So that is interesting. 2017. What I think Jon Sumrall is going to do, Arkansas sold out on the run. They were completely sold out on stopping the run because they had all heard the stories that Trinidad Chambliss was a running quarterback. He could not throw the ball, so they were going to populate the box and they were going to keep you from running the football. That's what Arkansas did. Whenever he was able to throw the ball, Ole Miss took advantage of their secondary because everybody was either trying to rush the passer or trying to stop the run. And they did a pretty good job stopping the run, if we're going to be honest about it. They did a decent job. Ole Miss only ran for about 120 yards, but they truly used the Engage 8 strategy that honestly was started by Tulane in 2023 to hopefully affect Trinidad Chambliss, but they didn't, and they couldn't. And the athletes on the outside and the tight ends that Ole Miss have, they were able to take advantage of what Arkansas was doing, and a big day happened. The explosive plays just happened because it ended up being man-to-man coverage on the outside and people to take advantage of in a lot of spots. And if you talk to Sam Pittman, he'll tell you that one of their problem was the fact that players having to travel when there's a check instead of where you are. So you ended up with some people out of position, and Ole Miss took advantage of that. Props to them for that. But I think Jon Sumrall is going to get up there, press man on the wide receivers on the outside. They're going to populate the box to try and stop the run game and bank on the fact that they're better up front than the Arkansas Razorbacks, which they are, if we're going to be honest about it. Trinidad Chambliss needs to combat this by running outside the tackle box, not scrambles, jet sweeps, outside zone plays, things like that to make them run side to side. Do a zone read to where Chambliss is the inside runner and the outside runner is Kewan Lacey, and force them to try and run side to side in the hot Mississippi temperatures. If you do that, you're going to wear down that defensive line, and Tulane's going to have to bring the safeties up, just like Arkansas. Same type thing, and Trinidad Chambliss can attack down the field in that situation as well. Listen, Jon Sumrall is going to try and confuse him, going to give him different looks that he hasn't seen in his college career. It's going to be up to Trinidad to adjust on the fly, because we are at the point, we are in JT Snow territory. You might remember back in the 90s, JT Snow coming in with the California Angels. Big story. He hit 10 home runs in like his first 13 games, and he finished up that year with like 15 or 16. He didn't hit very many after that because the film got out on JT Snow. The pitchers adjusted to JT Snow. They found the hole in his swing. SEC defensive coordinators are going to do the same thing. You got LSU, you got Arkansas. You got LSU, you got Georgia, and you got Oklahoma coming up. 3 really good defensive units. They're going to find the hole in the swing. So it's going to be imperative that Trinidad Chambliss takes care of the football, doesn't force stuff, which I don't think he does, and he runs the ball. If Ole Miss ends every possession with a kick, they win against Tulane. Heck, they probably win against LSU. John Retzlaff, we're going to talk about him as a running quarterback and what we saw on defense over the weekend as the week goes on. That's going to be a major story. But Jon Sumrall kind of trying to attack the way Trinidad Chambliss plays the game with a team that is very good tackling, very good football players. Willie Fritz started it. Jon Sumrall has continued it. Tulane is a very good team. They are probably a better overall team than Arkansas is and Kentucky is. Arkansas has a better offense, but a worse defense. Kentucky has a worse offense, but a better defense. The better overall team is probably the Tulane Green Wave. So we'll see exactly how they go. Anyway, in our final segment, this matchup with Tulane is setting up in the perfect trap spot for the Tulane Green Waves and the worst spot for Ole Miss. We'll explain that. The Rebels have to avoid walking straight into that landmine that the Green Wave present. Thankfully, at least, it won't be played on the surface of the sun down in New Orleans this time. So what does Ole Miss need to do? They need to value possessions, establish balance early, and make sure the defense doesn't give up explosive plays that allows the Tulane Green Wave to hang around. Execution and discipline, they are the keys to getting out of this game clean. We'll talk about exactly how to sidestep this trap. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing quite like it. But let's be real. Actually, getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. The endless queues, hidden fees, prices, jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up the Game Time app, and in just a couple of taps, click, I was able to find some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college teams getting football tickets for as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This is a really big game for the Ole Miss Rebels. It really is. And it's not just a big game because of what they're playing on the field. It's because of what it could mean. This is the last team that could get you in that 6-game stretch. Ole Miss made it through Kentucky. Ole Miss made it through Arkansas. If they get Tulane, the road to 6 wins after the first 6 games is there. All you have to do is beat LSU, which at the moment does not look particularly impressive on offense. Do they have weapons? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But are they looking good at the moment? No, they're not. They have offensive line problems, and they're probably having to compensate for those problems. So Tulane, coming into Oxford, they're coming in for a victory. Listen, this is probably the best G5 team in the entire country. This is the team that is likely going to make the playoffs as the G5 spot. Best case scenario for Ole Miss, Tulane is 11-1 with their only loss being to Ole Miss. If you want a resume builder for an at-large spot, it's a win over the G5 candidate in the college football playoffs. That's a nice bullet point. But Ole Miss fans, rightly so, they're looking ahead to see exactly what this could look like, because a win over the Tulane Green Wave sets up an absolutely massive game. One of the 3 massive games on Ole Miss's schedule, and the only one that is sitting at home, especially with South Carolina and Florida looking so bad. The 3 games in the middle of the schedule that scared you at the beginning of the year, they scare you right now. And to get to those games, to have fun in those games, to make it to where those games are meaningful, you need to beat the Tulane Green Wave. So that makes this Tulane game unbelievably important. But because of what lies ahead, it's human nature to look ahead of what's going on. What lies ahead? Does Ole Miss and LSU get game day if Ole Miss wins against Tulane? Because you could very likely, in that scenario, with the win over Tulane, have a top 10 ranked LSU and Ole Miss going into that week, being one of the 2 or 3 games of the week that week. That is why this Tulane game is such a trap game. Listen, they're going to talk about it. There's going to be people looking at it, but human nature dictates that you look forward. It just does. And if Ole Miss continues to go down the stretch and gets to that magic 6-0 number to where they just have to go 4-2 in the last part of their schedule, this Ole Miss team has the ability to go pretty far. They have the ability to do the playoff. They have everything is at your fingertips as long as you don't mess up against the Tulane Green Wave. And they're good enough to beat you. They are. They need help, like a lot of teams, but they are good enough to beat you. You can't give up possessions in that game. Every possession ends in a kick. That is your goal. Ole Miss did that against Arkansas, and that's how they won the game. Every possession ended with a kick. It's going to be massively important. No crazy penalties. The offensive line played pretty well over the course of that Arkansas game. And you just have to make plays and not give up explosives. There doesn't need to be explosive runs. There doesn't need to be explosive passes. Rhett Slash, an unbelievable quarterback. He has multiple 100-yard games. He's extremely mobile. He's not as mobile as Taylor Green, but he's extremely mobile. Ole Miss has to deal with all of that as well as the other stuff that's going on. Again, it's going to be Tuesday's show. Ole Miss is going to win this game by multiple scores if they play clean. We'll just go ahead and put that there. It doesn't matter if Chambliss starts or Austin Simmons starts. It doesn't matter who is playing quarterback. If Ole Miss plays clean, if they play their A game, they win this game by multiple scores. It's going to take turnovers. It's going to take penalties. It's going to take going forward at the wrong spot. All of that is going to allow Tulane to kind of raise up to the point where they can get you. If Ole Miss loses this game, it is Ole Miss's fault, not Tulane's fault. So it's going to be imperative that the Rebels take care of business on Saturday. So the rest of the schedule, which has the chance to be unbelievably fun, can happen. You want to talk about a perfect trap situation? There it is. The only thing that Ole Miss has on their side is it looks like they're going to be playing the game with a backup quarterback, which means that you're not going to do the overconfidence thing. You're not going to do the ego thing. You're not going to do any of that stuff. So maybe you don't overlook the best G5 team out there. Again, they're a well-coached team. Jon Sumrall, who's coached at Ole Miss, is doing a hell of a job down at Tulane. And he's going to be an SEC coach sooner rather than later, maybe this year, this hiring cycle. He'll end up getting hired at Arkansas or Florida or Kentucky. But for Ole Miss to lose this game, it has to be Ole Miss losing this game. This isn't a situation to where Tulane can win the game, in my opinion. All right. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day and making it your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps the show, and it is totally free. Your support means the world to us. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation, a longtime two-time Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A kickoff preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody, and remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football.